Shalom Mashpaka, greetings to the 12 tribes who are scattered overseas. Uh, this evening, or I should say late night, I thought of putting what I had shared in 2021 in a note format, in a video format. Okay, and this study is basically titled as Was Yahusha Impaled or Stoned? Now, given the facts that we all came, most of us came from the Roman, you know, Bashara that we were taught while we were as small children by our parents, and we came out of the Roman assembly, all right, to into the Hebrew roots movement, or wherever we are today. But we sometimes have that same carnal mindset of the Roman Bashara that has been taught to us right from our childhood, and we don't want to progress to understand the deep hidden mysteries in to understand the right perspective of the Bashara. Remember, the Bashara is the most important and crucial aspect of our walk with Yahusha Alaim in the new creation order, because if we do not understand the correct Bashara, all right, and as Shaul said, if anybody preaches Yahusha other than what we have preached, let him be accursed. And twice he says this, all right, let him be accursed. So we don't want to come under the curse of Yahusha Alahim, but we want to understand, that how he became a curse for us, as it is written, "Cursed is everyone who hangs on the tree." All right. So to understand the correct perspective of the Bashara, we need to understand and unwind ourselves from the Greco-Roman mindset held by Christianity, which teaches that Rome ruled over the Jews. So it wasn't possible for Jerusalem Council to stone under anyone under their authority, which we will see, them telling Pilate, saying that you give us the verdict. We have no authority to stone anyone. So that's what they say. So we first need to understand by seeing that the influence of the Jerusalem Council was presided by the chief priests and the scribes. Remember, I told you that there were more than one chief priest or high priest, uh, and we have a scripture recording Caiaphas and Ananias as chief priest, because if one fell ill on the day of atonement, so the other one had to do everything alone by himself. And it was such a serious matter that they, in fact, Acts chapter 4, verses 5 and 6 records more than uh, you know uh, two high priests. If you see over here, Ananias, Caiaphas, John, and Alexander, four, and as many were of the kindred of the high priest. So there were more than four high priests acting simultaneously, all right, while they, accused Peter and John for preaching in the name of Yahusha HaMashiach. So when we come to the book of Acts, all right, we can read all these facts, all right, and Stephen also, if you read Acts chapter 6 verses 15, it says, and all that sat in the council, which presided by the chief priest or the high priest, looking steadfastly on him, saw his face as it had been the face of an angel. And if you see the high priest, when Stephen is accused of, he says, are these things so? So the Jerusalem council was always presided by the high priest. We saw even Yahusha HaMashiach, when he was brought before the high priest, he tore his clothes. Remember, it was presided, the Jerusalem council was presided by the high priest. Even Saul, after his conversion, all right, we still see about the high priest Ananias, all right, presiding over the Jerusalem council when the accusation was brought against the apostle Paul, or Saul as we call him. Okay, so you can read all these verses. I won't go into the depth of them. Okay, so these are the scriptures: Matthew 24:57, John chapter 18 verses 19 to 24. So it all talks about the high priest presiding over the Jerusalem council. So it was evident that the high priest was a supreme authority in the council, all right, and Ananias was the supreme authority. during that time, while Caiaphas was the acting authority, okay, the second priest. So the Torah punishment, okay, now we will come to the crux of the matter, that the Torah punishment for accusation for blasphemy was stoning, and Stephen was stoned by the verdict by the same council. Okay, so those who say Yahusha couldn't have been stoned because Rome was ruling at that time and the council was in subjection to the Roman government authority, trials is false. Or else Stephen wouldn't have been stoned to death. He too would have been handed over to the Roman authority. I hope I'm making sense till now. So then what was the difference between the verdicts of Stephen and Yahusha? So now we need to understand, the verdicts. What was the verdict of Stephen and what was the verdict of Yahusha HaMashiach given by the Jerusalem Council? So uh, when we look at Stephen, all right, he was accused by the high priest council for only blasphemy. Okay, if you read Acts chapter 7 verses 55 to 58, I'll read out these verses. But he, being filled with the set apart Ruach, looked steadfastly into heaven and saw the esteem of Elohim and Yahusha standing at the right hand of Elohim. Verse 56, and he said, Look, I see the heavens opened and the son of Adam standing at the right hand of Elohim. Verse 57, and crying out with a loud voice, they stopped their ears and rushed upon him with one mind and threw him out of the city and stoned him. And the witnesses laid down their garments at the feet of a young man named Saul. So he was stoned outside the camp, just as stated by Torah. Were Romans involved in this stoning? Not at all. All right, Romans were not involved in the stoning of Stephen. What about Yahusha? Yahusha was accused both of blasphemy as well as rebellion towards the Roman authority. Hence, for the rebels, the Roman regime had to be involved in the trial. For Yahusha claimed he was a king, but his kingdom was not of this world. Remember, he said that my kingdom is not of this world. Okay, so that is why the first question when he's brought before Pilate, Pilate asks him, Are you a king or are you a sovereign? Luke chapter 23 verses 1 to 3 says, And the entire assembly of them, having risen up, led him to Pilate and began to accuse him, saying, We found this one perverting the nation and forbidding to pay taxes to Caesar, saying that he himself is Messiah, a king. And Pilate said to him, saying, Are you the king of the Jews? And answering him, he said, You say it. Okay, so this was a conspiracy to inflict a painful death through impaling Yahusha to the stake, which actually takes some days and not hours for anyone impaled on the stake to die. They were impaled against the roadway for passerby to see and mock them. Okay, so remember, Pilate set up a writing on Yahusha's stake or cross. What did he write? Yahusha, the king of the Jews. The other accusation was blasphemy, for which they could stone anyone cursing father or mother, cursing Yahuwah, making himself equal to Yahuwah, adultery, etc. And they didn't need Roman intervention in these cases, and Stephen is the proof of this. No Roman official was involved in the stoning of Stephen. It was purely by the council of the Jerusalem, presided by the chief priest. All right, if you understand Torah well, this is where you need to ponder and look back and understand so far. Okay, so we need to understand that the Jerusalem council, they conspired against Yahusha. They just hated him. Okay, if you read Matthew chapter 27 verses 1, and morning having come, all the chief priests and the elders of the people took counsel against Yahusha so as to put him to death. So Pilate, knowing the Jews' Torah, all right, asked them to try Yahusha according to their Torah. Now this is the context. Okay, he told the Jews, he told the chief priest that you have a Torah, right? Why don't you judge him according to your Torah? So the Jews who led him to Pilate, a Roman governor, to get him the death sentence, are replying to Pilate, who told them to take him and judge him according to their Torah. They said, it is not right for us to put anyone to death. Really? Okay, then how did they put Stephen to death? Years after Yahusha Mashiach had already ascended into heaven. So how did they put Stephen and others to death who blasphemed or cursed Yahuwah or adulterers? Remember the woman caught in the very act of adultery. They had brought her in the midst of Yahusha to throw stones at her. So that means they had the power and authority to stone people. Okay, so that's the context we need to understand. So here they are telling Pilate, okay, what are they saying? That it is not right for us to put anyone to death. So it's a conspiracy because they wanted to show, pass a verdict on Yahusha from the Roman authority, saying that, see, he made himself equal to Caesar. Okay, so anyone who makes himself equal to Caesar is not the friend of Rome. Okay, and moreover, he is saying that he is the sovereign, so he is making himself like a king as Caesar. So judge him according to the Roman law. Okay, so they wanted to inflict on Yahusha both the Roman law as well as the Jerusalem Council law of stoning. Okay, we'll come to that a bit later. So the context says because he made himself a sovereign or king, and because of this they had to involve the Roman authority, as it was a capital punishment they wanted to inflict on Yahusha, which is impaling along with their Torah for blasphemy, which is stoning. John chapter 18 verses 31 to 35. Okay, then Pilate said to them, you take him and judge him according to your Torah. The Jews said to him, it is not right for us to put anyone to death. Verse 32, in order that the word of Yahusha might be filled, which he spoke, signifying by what death he was about to die. Verse 33, then Pilate went back into the palace and called Yahusha and said to him, are you the king of the Jews? Yahusha answered him, do you say this from yourself, or did others talk to you about me? Pilate answered, am I a Jew? Your own nation and the chief priests have delivered you to me. What did you do? Hence, the conspiracy with great hatred towards Yahusha was to impale him or crucify him and stone him, cause stoning is painful but imminent death, while impaling or crucifying is a delayed, painful, long suffering death. That is why Yahusha died earlier than the zealots who died besides him, or the thieves who died besides him, and hence his legs needn't be broken, but the zealots or the thieves' legs had to be broken for immediate death, as the next day was the preparation day or a high Shabbat. Alright, so notice the zealots were tried only according to the Roman law. There was no Jerusalem council involved in stoning them. Alright, if it wasn't a preparation day, the next day they would have been days hanging on the tree, as they are not tried according to Torah but according to the Roman law. Alright, Deuteronomy chapter 21 verses 19 to 23. Now let's read the Torah verses. Okay, it says, then his father and his mother shall take hold of him and bring him out to the elders of his city, to the gate of his city, and shall say to the elders of his city, this son of ours is wayward and rebellious. He is not listening to our voice. He is a glutton and a drunkard. Then all the men of his city shall stone him to death with stones. Thus you shall purge the evil from your midst, and let all Yasharel hear and fear. And when a man has committed a sin worthy of death, then he shall be put to death, and you shall hang him on a tree. Verse 23, let his body not remain overnight on the tree, for you shall certainly bury him the same day, for he who is hanged is accursed of Elohim, so that you do not defile the land which Yahuwah your Elohim is giving you as an inheritance. So, Yahusha was judged both according to the Torah as well as the Roman law, and hence the preparation day was significant in not allowing his body to be overnight on the tree as per Torah. Okay, so if the Romans were not involved, okay, if the Romans were not involved, and only stoning was there, then the Torah says that let his body not remain overnight on the tree, for you shall bury him on the same day. But they wanted Yahusha to bear the capital punishment of Rome, to suffer, for a longer duration. But little did they know, that you know Elohim had pre-appointed the day for Yahusha to be impaled, all right, on the day of Passover, when they would be killing the preparation lamb, and that evening they were about to bear the, eat the Passover, and because of that, it was a high day, so they had no option but to, you know, allow the Romans to, break the legs of the people hanging on the stake, so as to die through suffocation, right? Because once you break the legs and the hands are nailed so tightly to the stake that the person cannot breathe, and he will pass out or he will die. Okay, so that was the plan. Actually, for Yahusha to be impaled and stay on the stake for a long, long duration, because they did not regard the Torah of Elohim. Okay, so if you read Galatians 3 verses 13, it says, Mashiach has redeemed us from the curse of the Torah, having become a curse for us, for it is written, cursed is everyone who hangs upon a tree. Now we read this portion, right? Deuteronomy, it's from Deuteronomy chapter 21, and this is the verse which Saul quotes, let his body not remain overnight on the tree, for you shall certainly bury him the same day, for he who is hanged is accursed of Elohim, so that you do not defile the land which Yahuwah your Elohim is giving you as an inheritance. So how could Saul not mean in the text the stoning of a rebellious son who cursed his mother and father, when quoting the Torah portion by saying Yahusha became a curse for us? Not that Yahusha was a rebellious son. We were the rebellious sons, as he took the punishment, our punishment upon himself. Remember, I spoke to you that Pilate even gave them an option, saying that I can release to you one prisoner, you know, for your Passover, because every year he had to release one prisoner. So he said that I'll release to you Yahusha, the king of the Jews. They said, away with him, impale him, impale him. And they said, they told him to release for them Barabbas. Remember, I told you Bar in Hebrew means son, and Abba means father. So son of the father. So he was a murderer, Barabbas. So they asked a murderer in replacement for Yahusha HaMashiach, a rebellious son. Actually, that Barabbas is us. We are the rebellious sons. And on our behalf, Yahusha HaMashiach went to the stake. Okay, now the other similarity. Now we'll look at the similarity. Okay, when you see Stephen when he was stoned, let's read Acts chapter 7 verses 60. And kneeling down, he cried out with a loud voice, it says, Master, do not hold this sin against them. And having said this, he fell asleep. Same thing about Yahusha Mashiach, Matthew chapter 27 verses 50. And Yahusha cried out again with a loud voice and gave up his ruach, or spirit. Remember, New Testament nowhere mentions about Yahusha Mashiach was stoned, right? But we need to decode, and we are in the decode method of understanding Torah and Yahusha HaMashiach. Alright, so far we have seen two aspects. What are the two aspects? One is Jerusalem Council involved in the stoning of a rebellious son, or a person who made himself equal to Yahuwah, or a person who was an adulterer. So the Jerusalem Council, presided by the chief priest, gave a verdict of stoning. Okay, that's how we see Stephen being stoned for blasphemy. Okay, but when it came to Yahusha HaMashiach, he was accused with two accusations. One, because he said that he is a king who's come from above and his kingdom is not of this world. So they accused him that he made himself equal to Caesar. So that's the reason they plotted against him to bring him before the Roman government to have the capital punishment on him. And at the same time, all right, they had to obey their Torah, right? What did the Torah say? Stone. And cursed is everyone who hangs on the tree. All right, so they had to stone and hang the person on the tree, and by evening take his body down. So that was the Torah portion which Shaul is quoting over here in Galatians chapter 3 verses 13. Isn't it? We just read the verse. Cursed is everyone who hangs on a tree. So if Shaul is quoting cursed is everyone who hangs on a tree, and it only means impaling of Mashiach and not the stoning part, leaving out the stoning part, it does not make sense, because he is quoting from the Torah portion which talks about stoning. Stone him with death, to death with stones, it says. Isn't it? You cannot isolate the text from each other. Okay, so that is the whole holistic view of the Bashara we need to understand. And then we are now seeing the similarity. When Stephen was stoned, he cried out with a loud voice. Okay, and Yahusha Mashiach Alahim, when he was stoned, he cried out with a loud voice. But here, just because it does not mention that he was stoned, all right, does not mean that he wasn't stoned. Okay, that's what we need to see, the similarity of why crying out with a loud voice and what it means. Okay, now let's come to Shaul's stoning and whipping. Okay, so when we read Acts chapter 14 verses 19, it says, but Yehudim or Jews arrived from Antioch and Iconium, and having won over the crowds, they stoned Shaul, dragged him out of the city, thinking he was dead. Okay, in 2 Corinthians 11:25, this is Shaul's own word, saying that 3 times I was beaten with rods, once I was stoned, 3 times I was shipwrecked, a day and night I have been in the deep. Now see what Shaul says. Okay, we have seen this verse before. Galatians 6 verses 17, it says, from now on let no one trouble me, for I bear in my body the scars of the master Yahusha. The word for scar we saw was stigma, right? It is a scar, okay, engravement. So what was that engravement about? It was the sharp stones that was cast to him, so, which caused the scars on his body. So that's what it means. So the scars of the master Yahusha on him would definitely mean scars of beating and stoning. When he went into Yehuda, his disciples told him he was just about to be stoned and he is going in there again. This was just before his death. So when you read John's Gospel of Bashara, he was to be stoned many times, as they accused him of blasphemy for making himself as the son of Elohim and being equal to Elohim. And it says each time his time had not yet come. So which time? Stoning or impaling? Hence here there was no discussion of impaling him. We need to take it to Yahusha to understand these things. So when you read John chapter 8 verses 58, Yahusha said to them, truly, truly I say to you, before Abraham came to be, I am. Therefore they picked up stones to throw at him, but Yahusha was hidden and went out of the set apart place, going through the midst of them, and so passed by. Again, when we read John chapter 7 verses 30, so they were seeking to seize him, but no one laid a hand on him, because his hour had not yet come. When he said in John chapter 10 verses 30, I and my Father are one, again the Jews picked up stones to stone him. Verse 32, and Yahusha answered them, many good works I have shown you from my Father, because of which of these works do you stone me? Okay, so in John chapter 11 verses 7 to 8, Yahusha said, then after this he said to the taught ones, let us go back to Judah. Verse 8, the taught one said to him, Rabbi, the Jews were but now seeking to stone you, and are you going back there again? Means, are you going back there? And let's ponder on this. Yahusha said he came to fulfill the Torah and the prophets, and not one quarts of a yard will be done away with it. Your English Bible says, not one tittle of the law shall be done away with it, without being fulfilled. So the Hebrew words is quarts of a yard, okay, which means the yard is the hand. and cots is the pricking of the hand, all right, or nails imprinted in the hand. Not one of that will go away until every thing will be fulfilled. Okay, so that's what it means. So if Saul says he became a curse for us, as it says, cursed is everyone who hangs on a tree, by quoting the Old Testament text from Torah, which also says of stoning, wouldn't that be an unfulfilled Torah text if Yahusha HaMashiach was not stoned? So we need to get the Bashara in the right perspective. That is the cots of the Yod. All right, the nail print or the scars, all right, on his body have to be identified, okay, and acknowledged, and you know, thanked. We should be thankful and with a grateful heart to him for fulfilling Torah for us, or else we were those rebellious sons who had to be stoned with those sharp stones. Deuteronomy chapter 21 verses 22, and when a man has committed a sin worthy of death, then he shall be put to death, and you shall hang him on the tree. This is the context of the verse that we were looking at, and how he was to be put to death, by stoning him. Okay. Now, put to death and hung on a tree. So when we read Deuteronomy chapter 21 verses 23, let his body not remain overnight on the tree, for you shall certainly bury him the same day. For he who is hanged is accursed of Elohim, so that you do not defile the land which Yahuwah your Elohim is giving you as an inheritance. We already read Galatians 3:13. Cursed is everyone who hangs on the tree. Okay. So killed just how? So how was the rebellious son killed? Or the person making himself equal to Yahuwah, or the person caught in adultery, how was he killed? So it says then, all the men of a city shall stone him to death with stones. Thus you shall purge the evil from your midst, and let all Yasharal hear and fear. Okay. So in the Torah it is written that for blasphemy one has to be stoned to death. So this would be the reason why Mashiach died before the zealots, as they accused him of blasphemy, and the chief priest had torn his clothes. Okay. Yahusha only spoke twice of him being the king. Now this is very interesting. Okay. So once before the high priest and another before Pilate. Remember, before the high priest he was being accused for blasphemy, and before Pilate he was being accused for making himself a sovereign. These two things we need to keep in mind. All right, before the high priest for blasphemy, because he made himself equal to Elohim by saying that he is the son of Elohim. According to them, that was blasphemy. Nobody could make that claim. And the second claim was, he said that my kingdom is not of this world. So he made himself equal to being a king. So these were the two accusations that was brought against him. Matthew 26 verses 63 to 65, but Yahusha remained silent. So the high priest said to him, I put you to oath by the living Elohim that you say to us, if you are the Messiah, the son of Elohim. Verse 64, Yahusha said to him, you have said it. Besides, I say to you, from now on you shall see the son of Adam sitting at the right hand of the power, and coming on the clouds of the heaven. Then the high priest tore his garments, saying, he has blasphemed. Why do we need any more witnesses? See, now you have heard his blasphemy. Okay, but did they drag him out of the city, and did they stone him? No. What did they do? They brought him under first the capital punishment, because they hated him so much. They wanted him to be inflicted by the Roman law, because they had those strips which were having nails and iron strips, where they would beat on his back and his flesh would be ripped up. Then they would place a crown of thorns on him, and they would beat him, spit on him, and drag him outside the city and impale him. Okay, so many people say that by because of this, Yahusha Mashiach passed out, right? But we need to keep Torah portion also in mind, that he had to fulfill every aspect of the Torah. And if he was not stoned, then he is not fulfilling the portions of the Torah for the rebellious son. So your sin would still remain. But be grateful to him and thankful to him if you see these things, and get your understanding of the Bashar in the right perspective. So the right hand of the power was claiming equality. John chapter 18 verses 37. Then Pilate said to him, you are the king then? Yahusha answered, you say it, because I am a king. For this I was born, and for this I have come into the world, uh, that I should bear witness to the truth. Everyone who is of the truth hears my voice. But remember, he was taken to a third person. Whom was he taken to? Herod, right? So, in front of Herod, he did not answer a single word, because there was no need for him to defend himself before Herod. The text says the high priest put him under an oath. According to Torah, he put him under oath, and Yahu says his form was disfigured. Here are a few scriptures. So, three things we need to understand. Pilate, what did he say? He is a sovereign, right? We read the text. Before the Jerusalem council also, he said that he is a sovereign. But he was brought before Herod. Was there a need for him to say that he is a sovereign before Herod? No. So he chose to keep his mouth shut, because that's where the verdict would come from, and that's where he would fulfill Torah. So he knew exactly what he was doing, because he was the high priest who presided over his own sacrifice. Hallelujah. Now, reading the verses where his form was disfigured, Isaiah chapter 52 verses 14. As many were astonished at you, so the disfigurement beyond any man's, and his form beyond the sons of men. Isaiah chapter 53 verses 2. For he grew up before him as a tender plant, and as a root out of dry ground. He has no form or splendor that we should look upon him, nor appearance that we should desire him. Leviticus chapter 24 verses 16. And he who blasphemes the name of Yahweh shall certainly be put to death, and all the congregation certainly stone him, the stranger as well as the native. When he blasphemes the name, he is put to death. John chapter 10 verses 33. The Yehudim answered him, saying, we do not stone you for a good work, but for blasphemy, and because you, being a man, make yourself Elohim. Also, after his resurrection, Miriam Magdalene could not recognize him, and so did his disciples who walked along the road with him to Emmaus, if you remember. So Miriam Magdalene mistook him to be the gardener, isn't it? But she couldn't recognize him because his face was disfigured. The scars or the stigma of his sufferings were still on his body. His body was not yet glorified. That's the reason he tells his disciples also to, put their fingers into his wounds. All right. It says he asked them to put their fingers into his wounds, into his side, into his nail prints, into the scars on his body. So his face was so disfigured, and I will come to that because it clearly tells us how the stoning takes place from a parable. So I'll come to that a bit later. And Luke chapter 24 verses 13. And see, two of them were going the same day to a village called Emmaus, which was 60 stadia from Jerusalem, and they were talking to each other of all this which had taken place. Verse 15. And it came to be, as they were talking and reasoning, that Yahusha himself drew near and went with them. Verse 16. But their eyes were restrained, so that they did not know him. And this is the verse, John chapter 20 verses 15. Yahusha said to her, woman, why do you weep? Whom do you seek? Thinking he was a gardener. She said to him, Master, if you have carried him away, say to me where you put him, and I shall take him away. Just imagine these people, these disciples, and Mary Magdalene was so close to Yahusha Mashiach. They interacted with him almost every day. They were ministering him from their substance, right? That's what the scripture says. So, how could they not recognize him? We read the passages from Isaiah, all right? His face was disfigured. And how can a face be disfigured? By the stoning. And that's how they could not recognize him, because his body, had changed, went through a transformation. Okay, and that's how they could not recognize their own master. Okay, so when someone has been so long with them, how couldn't they recognize him? So that is a question that we need to ask. Now let's read Mark chapter 15 verses 44 and 45. And Pilate marveled if he were already dead, and calling him uh, the the centurion, he asked him whether he had been uh, any while dead. Verse 45, and when he knew it of the centurion, he gave the body to Joseph. Now why would Pilate marvel? Pilate marveled because he knew the impalement was a long, painful process, and a person cannot die so soon. That's how the zealots were still alive. Much after even Yahusha died, and they had to break those people's leg. But when they came to Yahusha, they saw that he was already dead. So the soldier pierced into his side, and water and blood flowed out of his side. They did not break his legs, isn't it? Because he had already died. And how did he die? Scriptures are silent, but the Torah portion tells us what exactly caused his death. It was not just the impaling, but the stoning part, and that was left out from the zealots. That's the reason they were alive. They went through the same capital punishment, all right, that Yahusha went through. All right, they too may have been scourged. They too may have gone through that painful process, all right, of the Roman capital punishment. But did they die? No, they did not. They were still alive. Okay, and that's how they broke the leg, so that through suffocation they should die. So the zealots, termed as thieves in English, were already alive even after going through the same process Yahusha went through. It had to be stoning, which caused Yahusha's death earlier. Thus, Yahusha fulfilled the Torah portion for the rebellious sons by taking the penalty of stoning on himself, along with being the Pishak lamb who takes away our sin. So the process was reversed for Yahusha. He was hung on the stake and then stoned. Now see the hatred, all right, that we read, right, in Deuteronomy chapter 21. The Torah portion said that a person who was a rebellious son, who made himself equal to Yahuwah, or an adulterer, all right, he had to be first stoned and then hung on the stake. And cursed is everyone who hangs on the stake. But for Yahusha, they reversed the process. What did they do? They first hung him on the stake and then stoned him after he went through that entire painful process. So just imagine the hatred that they had. All right, now it's interesting to read, the Psalms chapter 22, which is a messianic psalm. All right, it says, verse 14. I'll read from verse 14. It says, "I am poured out like water, and all my bones are out of joint. My heart is like wax; it is melted in the midst of my bowels. My strength is dried up like a potsherd, and my tongue cleaveth to my jaws. And you have brought me into the dust of death. For dogs have compassed me; the assembly of the wicked have enclosed me. They pierced my hands and my feet. I may tell all my bones; they look and stare upon me." Verse 18, "They part my garments among them and cast lots upon my vesture." So the bones of Yahusha were not broken, as scripture states. Not one bone would be broken. So if it says here that his bone, right, are out of joint, all right, it means that uh, you know we need to understand that his bones were exposed, as his flesh was torn apart from the stoning. So we need to study more to understand these truths, which Christianity has suppressed the Torah through a God's spell, which is called gospel, of a Roman and Greek viewpoint. So the Hebraic covenant mindset or viewpoint is having the mind of Mashiach, which reveals the hidden truths from scripture. So the divinity of Mashiach is hidden from the obvious face value understanding of scriptures, and there are many things that scriptures don't speak explicitly, but we must see Torah and its requirements to be fulfilled to understand what pain and suffering our Mashiach, Yahusha, Elohim went through for us to bring us back to Him. Exodus chapter 29 verses 38 to 42. And this is what you prepare on the slaughter place or the altar. Two lambs a year old daily, continually prepare one lamb in the morning and the other lamb you prepare between the evenings, and 1/10 of an ephah of flour mixed with 1/4 of an hin of pressed oil and 1/4 of an hin of wine as a drink offering with the one lamb. Verse 41, and prepare the other lamb between the evenings, and with it prepare the grain offering and the drink offering as in the morning for a sweet fragrance, an offering made by fire to Yahuwah. Verse 42, a continual ascending offering for your generations at the door of the tent of appointment before Yahuwah, where I shall meet with you to speak with you. So Yahusha fulfilled the entire period from the third hour when the first lamb offering a year old with the same time of incense offering to the sixth hour when the second lamb was offered along with the incense offering at the same time. Elohim brought darkness over the whole land during the completion of the second lamb offering to show that the requirements as per Torah was fully satisfied by Yahusha, because when the incense offering was offered in the temple at the ninth hour, the veil of the most set apart place was torn into two. So the incense smoke caused darkness in the set apart place. Remember, Yahusha was a replica of the earthly tabernacle. All right, so that's the reason the whole darkness came over the whole land. Why was that? It was because it was the ninth hour when the incense hour. So Elohim was showing us that it was the incense hour, and here, all right, is the Son of the Most High, all right, Elohim, who is Elohim Himself, is dying for the sins of His people, fulfilling every aspect of Torah. Okay. So the true Lamb of Elohim was impaled outside the camp, where Elohim brought the clouds of darkness as His prayer brought forth the incense before the throne. So when fully satisfied with the requirements of the sacrifice required by Torah, Elohim then fulfilled the Torah portion which spoke of stoning of the rebellious sons by putting that punishment of their sins on Mashiach, the Son of the living Elohim. That's why by our belief in Yahusha, we receive the Ruach of redemption and get the right to call Elohim as Abba. Okay. Now the stone in which is the Ab and the Ban. So this is something very interesting that I want to show you. I'll draw it in Paleo Hebrew. So this is the Aleph. Okay. This is the Bet. Okay. So Aleph Bet means Ab, and which means the father. Okay. Excuse me for my writing. So Ab means father. Okay. And Ban means son. So Ab means father, Ban means son, and Aban means stone. Remember, we read the stone which the builders rejected has become the chief cornerstone. So who is it talking about? It is talking about Yahusha HaMashiach, all right, who is both, has the fullness of the fatherhood and the sonship in him. Okay, and the hatred of today's world, the people today also hate him, because unknowingly they are casting stones, which is Aban. Their ideas of a father and of the son are being cast to him, saying that no, we despise you. You are, you have no portion to be called Yahuwah. You are just the son, a created being. So this is the Bashara that people believe in. All right, and they tell you, Abba, go to Abba Yahuwah. Yahusha is only a lamb, created being, sacrifice. So they are still casting stones at him, because they are rejecting the chief cornerstone, The Aban, the true stone, who is Yahusha HaMashiach. So beautiful imagery which is concealed in scripture. Okay. Isaiah chapter 28 verses 16. Therefore, thus said the Master Yahuwah, see, I am laying in Zion a stone, Aban, H68, for a foundation, a closely examined stone, a precious corner stone, a established foundation. He who trusts shall not act. He who trusts shall not act quickly. Right? So see the beautiful aspect. He is the stone, Aban. The woman who was caught in the very act of adultery was brought to Yahusha to see what he would say of uh, them stoning her. So Yahusha told them, he who had no sin could be the first one to cast the stone, and all left one by one. So Yahusha was the only one eligible to cast the stone to that woman, as he alone stood there sinless. He was sinless, right? So he says that he who has no sin, let him cast the first stone. So he could have done that. But he told her he does not condemn her. The woman is a reflection of Yasharel, who hoed away from him into idolatry, all right, by remarrying different lovers. And for that, he had to pay the price for her adultery. And the penalty of punishment of adultery was stoning, if you understand Torah. Okay. Hence, the stone stood firm, examined thoroughly, precious, a precious stone, all right, when the sinners cast stone. Because if you see here, all right, the stone was a precious, the word is yakar, which is precious, and uh, the word for corner is the face, the precious face. That precious face was demarred or disfigured through that stoning. But he stood firm for you and for me. That is the true Bashara. Okay, now let's look at Mashiach's cry from the stake. Alright, so it's very interesting to see his cry was Alai Alai Lama Shabaktani. Okay, now the word Shabaktani, alright, when Mashiach cried when on the stake Alai Alai Lama Shabaktani, which is translated as my Al, why have you forsaken me? So the root words in Shabaktani are Shab, alright, which means turn around. Okay, I'll just draw it. Let me just discard this. Okay, let me draw it over here. Okay, Shab is written as, okay, this is Shab. Alright, Shab means to turn. Okay, and Shabak means left alone for a long time. So if I add a kuf over here, it becomes Shabak. Alright, means left for a long time. Okay, and Tan is also a sea monster and a dragon. Alright, so remember the word Shabak Tanai, right? So Tau. So Tau is written as two cross sticks. Shabak Tanai. Okay, none is like this, sorry. Yeah, this is none. So I'm not able to move my cursor, otherwise I would have. 1 second. Let me show it to you this way. Okay, so Shabak Tanai. This is Shabak right, Tanai. This is the Nun and this is the Yod. Okay, Shab means to turn, and we saw Shabak means left for a long time. Okay, Tan is a sea monster or a dragon. Okay, and the Kuf in the Shabak is the sun setting down, in this case as in turned down. So the Kuf picture, if you see, is a picture of the sun. It's either rising or it's setting on the horizon. Okay, in the Canaanite Proto Hebrew, All right, this was the picture of Kuf, the sun on the horizon. Either it's rising or it's setting down. Okay, so the cry of Mashiach had a deep breath of Ruach. All right, so Shabak or turned away for a long or left me here for a long time among the monsters is also mentioned in Psalms chapter 22. Didn't we read that the dogs have surrounded me, strong bulls of Bashan have surrounded me, right? It's written, right? So that's the monsters. Who are those monsters? The chief priests, the scribes, the Jerusalem council, the Romans, along with the Gentiles who brought him into that capital punishment of the Romans and also according to the Torah. Okay, it says in Psalms 22, strong bulls of Bashan have surrounded me. Bashan was a place beyond the Jordan, given to half tribe of Manasseh, and the place was called as Galilee of the Gentiles. If you read Deuteronomy chapter 3, verses 13, and the rest of Gilead and all Bashan, the king of Og, I gave to half the tribe of Manasseh, that is Manasseh, all the district of Argob and all Bashan called the land of the Rephites. So, who was Manasseh? Manasseh was the eldest son of Joseph, and his blessing was given to Ephraim, who was the younger son, to the crossed hands. To the crossed hands, the blessing was given. So now I understand why the crossed hands, as it showed the stake of Mashiach through the impaling of his hands. Alright, Yahusha Mashiach was impaled, the crossed hands blessing, which clearly shows that he is the firstborn, alright, passing on the blessing to us, alright, who are not the firstborns. Such a beautiful love Elohim has for us. So this crossing of hands was tried to stop by Joseph, but his father, being a prophet, understood that Manasseh's seed would partake in the impaling and stoning of Mashiach as Gentiles of Galilee, whereas Ephraim's seed would be in dispersion, and the crossing over the firstborn blessing would bring him near. All right. It says here, Acts chapter 4, verses 27, for truly in the city there was gathered together against your set apart servant Yahusha, whom you anointed, both Herod and Pontius Pilate, with the Gentiles and the people of Yasharel. Okay, so the Gentiles were the people beyond the land, right? Beyond the Jordan, I'm sorry, in the land but beyond the Jordan, and it's identified to be the tribe of Manasseh because strong bulls of Bashan was a place given to half the tribe of Manasseh. So Elohim left Yahusha on the stake for a long while for the completion of the lamb, morning and evening sacrifice, along with the incense offering, when the veil was torn from top to down during the ninth hour, which was the incense hour post the second daily lamb offering. So during this time, Elohim brought darkness over the whole land, just as smoke darkens the air through incense offering. So, and when Yahusha cried, Alai, Alai, Lama Shabachthani, he had finished the Torah requirements for the lamb offerings, and because of this delay beyond the cry to hasten the completion of the end fulfillment of all Torah to be made one with us in the transition into his body, which includes being stoned by the strong ones of Bashan for the rebellious sons. Okay, so the chief priest and the scribes thought he was calling Elijah to save him, not that they did not understand uh, not that they didn't understand Hebrew, but they would have understood partly because they witnessed the darkness of the whole land, and the report would have come to them that the veil of the temple was torn into two. So unless Elohim gives repentance, they or anyone cannot turn to him. About Stephen it is written, they saw that his face was the face like an angel, and yet they stoned him with the gnashing of teeth. They did the same with Mashiach when he cried, Alai, Alai, lama sabachthani. They waited to see, uh, if Elijah would come to rescue him, and then they stoned him. So it was an answer to Yahusha's prayer, as we saw the actual meaning. The cry meant, my El, why have you left me for so long among the dragon monsters or monsters? His cry was that he fulfilled the requirements of the morning and evening sacrifice and all of Torah, and yet he is still alive, and it's time to fulfill the Torah requirements now to adopt the rebellious sons into his sonship. Such a beautiful picture. That's the reason there was a cry. And it's also interesting if you see, uh, in the Old Testament, the actual cry mentioned is Alai Alai Lama Azabtanai, right? Which is translated as my El, why have you forsaken me? But John, specifically, I think John, or from where we are reading this, Alai Alai Lama Shabaktanai, is from. Let me just check. And let me also see if I can find the Hebrew word. So when we come to the New Testament, yeah, Matthew, it's Matthew who mentions, okay? What does it say? And about the ninth hour, Yahusha cried with a loud voice, saying, Alai, Alai, Lama, Shabaktanai. That is to say, my El, why has thou forsaken me? Okay, so this same verse, when you read, I think it's in the Psalms. Yeah, Psalms 22. Okay? Okay, my El, why hast thou forsaken me? Can you see this? Azab. Alright, the actual word there is Azab Tanai. My El, Azab Tanai. Right, but when you read Matthew chapter 27, it says Shabak Tanai. That's the reason they could not understand the language, because Shabak Tanai means, why have you left me for so long? Alright, I fulfilled every aspect of Torah. Now it is time for me to fulfill the Torah of the rebellious sons. So let's do it. Let it happen. Make it happen. That's what Shabak Tanai means. Whereas Azab Tanai, Christianity says, oh, the father forsook him and left him alone on the stake because the father cannot sin and he has to be away from sin. So that's the reason he left his son alone on the stake. Or all these things, crap, which we were taught right from our childhood. So that's not what it means. Alright, so there was a change in the word Azab Tanai and Shabak to Shabak Tanai, alright, which means, why have you left me for so long? Not that Yahusha did not fulfill it. Alright, Shabak Tanai has part of forsaken. Alright, so the forsaking is not Elohim leaving Yahusha. The forsaking is of the sons, the rebellious sons who have gone away from the Torah. Alright, so let me go, let me fulfill and let me get them back. Let's have this completed. And then he said, it is finished. So what a beautiful picture when he was stoned and when he cried out with a loud voice, he said, it is finished. So we saw about the crossed hands. Okay, impaled and killed. Okay, now this is very interesting because these scriptures are right before our eyes, but we are not able to identify them. If you read Acts chapter 2 verses 23, this one given up by the set purpose and foreknowledge of Elohim, you have impaled and killed through the hands of lawless men. So why would Peter use two words, impaled and killed? Okay, if impaling itself is killing Yahusha HaMashiach, so why would he use the word killed over there? Ask yourself this question if he was not stoned. Because if impaling itself would kill him, there was no need of mentioning, and killed over there. Now this is the Aramaic, okay? This is also interesting. If you read, I don't know how many of you will be able to see this. Okay, if I do this, comes up. For this one who was appointed unto this by the foreknowledge and by the will of Allah, which is Allahim, you have delivered into wicked hands and have crucified and have killed. So even the Aramaic talks about him being crucified and being killed. So two words, different words. So and this is the from the Khaboris Codex, which is the oldest Aramaic translation, older than the Greek manuscripts. Okay, so Kefa particularly emphasizes on Yahusha being impaled and killed. So if impaling itself was killing, then he wouldn't have used the word kill there, putting up both the words in Khaboris, which are translated as crucified or impaled and killed. So the stoning of Shaul and the implications of the stoning, which ties up to Yahusha Mashiach, is definite evidence. Acts chapter 14 verses 19 to 20. But Jews arrived from Antioch and Iconium, and having won over the crowds, they stoned Yahusha, dragged him out of the city, thinking he was dead. They stoned Shaul, dragged him out of the city, thinking he was dead. But while the taught ones gathered around him, he rose up and went into the city, and on the next day he went away with Barnabas to Derbe. We know that Shaul the emissary was stoned and he miraculously survived, but he had his eyesight impacted. That's why most of his letters were written by someone else and not by himself. He was a learned man who learned Torah at the feet of Gamaliel, but most of his letters, all right, were written by someone else. Okay, if you read Romans chapter 16 verses 22, I Tertius, who wrote this letter, greet you in Allahim. Okay, so Shaul ends 1 Corinthians, Colossians, 2 Thessalonians saying, I Paul write this greeting with my own hand. All right, so why would he write? Or some translations say, I Shaul or Paul write this salutation with my own hand, which means the only salutation part was written by his hand. The rest of the letter was written by someone else. All right, so that's what it means. So and we saw this in Romans chapter 16 verses 22. I Tertius, who wrote this letter, greet you in Allahim. Okay, so why would Tertius write the letter? That shows Shaul's eyesight was impacted because of the stoning. Okay, 1 Corinthians was written with the help of Sosthenes. He says 1 Corinthians 1:1, Shaul and called emissary of Yahusha Mashiach by the desire of Allahim and brother Sosthenes. So why would he mention Sosthenes? Because Sosthenes was writing the letter. 2 Corinthians and Colossians was written with the help of Timothy. 2 Corinthians 1:1, it says Shaul, an emissary of Yahusha Mashiach by the desire of Allahim, and Timotheus, the brother, to the assembly of Allahim, which is at Corinth, with all the set apart ones who are in all Achaia. So just as we read that, and brother Sosthenes to the assembly of Allahim, which is at Corinth, which is the first letter. Second letter he says, and Timotheus the brother to the assembly of Allahim, that is at Corinth. So which clearly shows that Shaul himself did not write any of the letters, only the salutation was written by him, and because of the impact on his eyesight, which I will prove it a bit later. Colossians 1:1, Shaul, an emissary of Yahusha Mashiach by the desire of Allahim, and Timotheus, our brother, to the set apart ones in Colossae. See, Timotheus wrote on behalf of Shaul. So the historians will say anything, or traditionalists will say anything, that Shaul had secretaries, which is absurd. They say that he had secretaries who wrote these letters for him. But it's a fact that when he was stoned, he had an eye injury, which caused him to take help from the brethren to write for him. Now this is where is an eye opener. It was an eye opener for me when I read Galatians. Okay, Galatians was the only book written, or only epistle written by Shaul by his own hands. And see what he writes towards the end. Galatians 6 verses 11. See with what big letters I have written to you with my own hand. So why would Shaul use big letters? if you have impact on your eyesight, all right, you would use a bigger font, right? Big letters to write something. Then only you will be able to see. So he says that, by see with what big letters I have written to you with my own hand. Because what happens is when the Jews, all right, throw stones, they first aim at the head, okay, and this we will see. I think it's in one of the parables. Yes, see, in the parable of the vineyard, Mashiach himself spoke of his servant being stoned and wounded in the head. If you read Mark chapter 12, verses 4, and again he sent them another servant, and throwing stones at him, they wounded him in the head and sent him away, having insulted him. So they would aim for the head so as to kill a person instantly. And Shaul, remember, was miraculously saved. And after being saved, he had an impact on his eyesight, and that is very, very clear in Galatians, where he says, see with what big letters I've written to you with my own hand." Again, Galatians 4:14 and 15, "And my trial which was in my flesh you did not despise or reject, but you received me as a messenger of Elohim, as Mashiach Yahusha. What then was your blessedness? For I bear you witness that if possible you would have plucked out your own eyes and given them to me." So why would he say this? That you would have plucked out your own eyes and given them to me, unless his eyesight was not impacted. So these are the things which you need to pick up, beloved, to understand. Psalms chapter 38, verses 10. "My heart pants, my strength fails me. As for the light of my eyes, it is also gone from me." This again is a messianic psalm. It says, "As for the light of my eyes, it has also gone from me," which shows that Yahusha HaMashiach was also stoned, and they aimed at his head. "My loved ones and my friends stand aloof from my plague, and my kinsmen stand afar off." So the messianic passage shows a similarity, as before the event actually happened, it says of Mashiach words that the light of his eyes have gone out. In the parable of the vineyard, we already saw, right, they wounded the servant in the head. Right? So that's where they aimed the stones towards, which made Shaul partially blind. And yes, he had no secretaries, as theologians or traditionalists would want us to believe. And Shaul said in Galatians 6:17, the very letter he wrote with large letters, to the Galatians assembly. And then he also says in verse 17, "From now on, let no one trouble me, for I bear in my body the scars of the Master Yahusha." So if Shaul was partially blind due to stoning, and he's only talking about the scars which he received through scourging, all right, it does not make sense. It does not make sense if he leaves out the scars of stoning, which shows that the same scars were on the master's body. So the scars have to be the likeness of the stoning that partially blinded him, as was Mashiach, who was impaled on the stake. So Stephen testified in Acts 7:52, "Which of the prophets did your fathers not persecute? And they killed those who foretold the coming of the just one, of whom you have become the betrayers and murderers." So they murdered Mashiach contrary to Torah. Scripture tells us that his body was marred. Then how was it marred? All right. Isaiah 52:14, "Just as many were astonished at you, so his visage was marred more than any man, and his form more than the sons of men." So all these scriptures were right before our eyes, and yet without the Ruach's help, we couldn't see or understand them. Some say Peter also had a secretary, Silas, based on 1 Peter 5:12. "Through Silas, the trustworthy brother, as I reckon I have written to you briefly, encouraging and witnessing that this is the true favor of Elohim in his stand fast. She who is in Babel, chosen together with you, greets you, also my son Marcos." This is not true, because Silas was sent from the Jerusalem assembly to accompany Saul and Barnabas in the ministry, and he was never with Peter. The only time Peter writes this letter through Silas was when Peter was in prison, right, and in Babylon, right, which is actually Rome, where he says that she who is in Babel, chosen together with you, greets you. So this letter that Peter wrote was by the hands of Silas, because Peter was in prison at that time. I'll skip all this. So Kepha had written the letter when he was in Rome, and the time of his departure was at hand, where he talks about in 2 Peter 1:14. Peter was only delivering the letter through Silas from Rome to those in dispersion due to the persecution in Jerusalem. Silas was an accomplice of Saul and Barnabas, and Saul had a sharp argument over Mark, and Saul took Silas with him, and Barnabas took Mark along with him. To post this, scriptures are silent on Barnabas, but Mark is found with Peter in prison, as stated in 1 Peter 5 verses 13. Alright, so coming back to Mashiach, when all things are fulfilled concerning him, his body was taken down from the tree and laid in the tomb. Acts chapter 13 verses 29. And when they had accomplished all that was written concerning him, taking him down from the tree, they laid him in a tomb. So beloved, get your Bashara in the right perspective to understand, that Yahusha Mashiach fulfilled every parts of a yod of Torah. And if he had left out any Torah portion, as stated in Deuteronomy chapter 21, you or me will be doomed. And if you don't believe this aspect of truth, then question yourself. Are you truly saved? Whom are you being led by? Are you going to understand the Greco-Roman mindset, not even allowing these scriptures to sink in you, to understand the deep mystery. All right, so this note has caused a division in many people who are very close to me. They just could not grasp this, because I don't know, it may be a blind spot in them, and some of them have parted ways from me. But that's fine, as long as we understand Torah and the fulfillment of the Torah and get our Bashara right. That is what matters the most. Yahusha Baraki. Hallelujah.